And welcome to 21 Conversations, the 2021 Greensboro Bound Literary Festival. I'm Shannon Jones, one of the organizers of Greensboro Bound and manager of Scuppernong Books. Greensboro Bound is so excited to present to you these 21 Conversations, our effort to create something unique and special for our community within the confines of our continued virtual environment. 21 Conversations pays homage to North Carolina's rich literary history while broadening our tent to welcome in voices outside of our own microcosm of experience. This featured presentation is but a taste of the 52 authors that we have gathered together for a series of delightful, sometimes unexpected, but always edifying conversations. Since our inception, Greensboro Bound has been committed to providing programs just like the one you are about to watch, 100% free to our community. In order to do that, we need the financial support, both big and small, of readers just like you. Please support Greensboro Bound by giving now. The text to give phone number as well as our website are on your screen. A sustaining gift of just $15 a month or the cost of a single children's book will help us remain financially solvent throughout the year. I also want to take a moment to thank our sustaining supporters without whom Greensboro Bound would not be possible. Our utmost gratitude to the Edward M. Armfield Senior Foundation, the Ruth Lance Memorial Fund, and Arts Greensboro for their continued belief in our vision to bring together readers and writers of all genres, ages, ethnicities, identities, and voices to foster an understanding of writing as a process that allows free expression, deepens critical thought, and helps sustain a culture of inquiry and delight that is open to all. Thank you again for joining us for the 2021 Greensboro Bound Literary Festival, and please enjoy the conversation.
So welcome, I'm DABNEY Sanders, and I am a board member of Greensboro Bound, the board chair actually, and I'm really thrilled to be here as a part of the 21 Conversations. I think I was asked to host this program because I love to cook and love to eat, and I have been a fan of Whitney's and Ricky's since I was introduced to their cookbook. So it's great to be here, and Ricky and Whitney, I'd love to welcome you as a part of this program.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. Glad to be a participant.
Great. So Ricky is the founder and the proprietor and chef of Saltbox Seafood Joint. He has 2 restaurants in Durham, North Carolina. And Whitney is, I guess, most known, she's an award-winning chef, but most known for her work with the Greyfield Inn on Cumberland Island that led to her creation of the Saltwater Table. And she's off on a new adventure now that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I want to start, you all both are so connected into cooking from the local community. That's one of the similarities, I think, in your books. And I just want to show, this is Whitney's book, The Saltwater Table. I have to say, Whitney, this is one of the most beautiful cookbooks I own. It's just such a pleasure to read. I would encourage people to actually purchase it and enjoy it, even if you have no intentions of cooking anything out of it, because it's really lovely. And what I love about it is your first few gorgeous photographs in the book are not of food at all, but are of place. And I would love for you to just talk a little bit about sort of how you came to that place and that enjoyment of place as being critical to your work.
Sure. So specifically for me, going to Cumberland is kind of its own wild story. I moved to Georgia in 2006, and I moved to Athens, Georgia. And in coming to the South for the very first time, and in moving here, a way for me to afford to travel and explore my region was through state parks and national parks. I've always been really fascinated by those environments. And I learned about Cumberland through a PBS series about great national parks. And I saw it and thought, well, I just have to go there. I really got to go there. And so I kind of saved my pennies for the opportunity to spend one night at Greyfield. And this was long before I ever moved there. And I fell in love with it. I mean, who doesn't fall in love with Cumberland Island? I just don't know. It's so amazing. It's undeveloped. It's, I'd never been to the coast in the South, and it's such an atmospheric place and so very inspiring. And so that's sort of the path that led me to that island. There's a long story. I can talk way too long about it. But you speak to the beauty of the book, which I really appreciate. And a lot of the way that I create is based on images. That's how I get inspiration, and the environment too really impacts how I create the place that I am, an expression of where I'm living. And for me, in order to start that book, in order to express what the story is, it had to start by expressing that place, very much so for me. So.
Great. Well, thank you. And Ricky, I want to show everybody your book, Saltbox Seafood Joint Cookbook. And I was also struck, the very opening pages of your book, you really give us an education about fish and about local fish to North Carolina, and the seasonality of those and how to cut them and cook them. And tell us a little bit about sort of how you came to where you are today.
So here's what I would share with you. The whole idea of Saltbox, honestly, came from a trip from when I went to Singapore. And I was in a place in my professional career where I was ready to start my own venture. I wasn't necessarily wanting to do anything too highbrow, even though I came from all of that. So I took this trip, and it was actually an interview. And when I got over there, I was going to do a tasting, and all of a sudden, the folks who I was going to cook for didn't show up. So I was over in Singapore for like 15 days hanging out. So I kind of explored Singapore and hung out. But also, what struck me was these hawker stalls, these open air eateries where you had maybe 2 or 3 people, cooking out of them. So that kind of sparked an idea. I said, you know what? I would love to start something that small so I can do everything myself. So that was sort of the reference to it. Now, Saltbox came to be, it was more of a little small place I wanted to create and keep it simple, and also keep it sort of micro-regional. So when I did the book, I thought about the same thing. Everything about Saltbox is simple, all right? It's meant to be that way. It's not meant to be complicated, but obviously the food is sure-handed and uber seasonal. So I wanted to write this book to speak to that, because there's this idea that since North Carolina, we have 101 miles of coastline, and we're never referenced for our seafood preparations. So I wanted to be sort of the individual who kind of started that conversation, and maybe to continue it. And so a lot of times too, I wanted the recipes themselves, I wanted to keep them simple and help people build confidence in cooking fish. So.
Great. And you did an amazing job of that. You referenced that you had some highbrow training, which you certainly did. And could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, just like all of us, who wanted to be in the profession of hospitality, in particular being a chef, you took the classical route. What does that mean? That means, you went to go work for a French person or a French environment, and you went to learn classics and that sort of thing. So that was kind of my chosen career path. I officially started off, as a child, growing up as a rural country boy, in Eastern North Carolina. So, all the idea of organic and local and that sort of thing was totally, first nature for me. It was nothing new. But I joined the military and had a fun time, and I fell into the kitchen somehow, and then that kind of sparked some ideas, and I pursued it. And a lot of my training, whether Gray Kuntz, Daniel Boulud, I spent time over in Paris, 3 Michelin-star restaurants, Alsace, Marlinheim, Singapore, Chicago, DC. So spent time in environments because that's what we were supposed to do. You reach a level of maturity, okay? And then you get to a point where, okay, I'm ready to be my own boss. So what does that mean? Okay, now I have to write the checks. Let's keep it honest here, okay? And so when you do something, you think about it from that angle. No longer are you just a leader in an environment. Now you're the owner. So there's different mindsets. So when I thought about, Saltbox, that's how I approached it. Keep it simple and manage the unforeseen challenges that we all face in the restaurant business.
Sure. Yeah. And Whitney, you've had an equally amazing trajectory and experiences with stages in incredible restaurants. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that experience, both what you experienced and the importance maybe of that kind of training, and also if you see that changing at all, either now or in the future.
Sure. Well, first, can I just say that Ricky's restaurant is one that makes me hungry when I read about it. And in him saying simplicity in, the food he's cooking, I think there's a mythology that simplicity always is easy, but simplicity is the best marker of an amazing chef creating something beautifully. And I think what he's doing is that. And it's to have a place like that where there's quality and there's someone who has spent so much time educating themselves in their field, and then to be able to go and have like a perfect fish sandwich there. I mean, to me, that's like all I ever really want. So
I appreciate you, lady. Oh, that's so beautiful. Real quick, I'm going to interrupt you. My wife, she was like, yo, we got to go and see this Whitney. I mean, there's and I mean this in the most gentle, respectful way, as a feminine sort of approach to the book that is very, easy to read and easy to look at and easy to experience. And she was like, man, yes, oh yeah, that's good. So I mean, for me, man, your book is out of sight, honestly. You go straight, you take no detours to flavor, and that I enjoy. No detours. No roundabouts, you go straight to it. I think about, as I read your recipes and look at your book, obviously the visual is beautiful, but, there's a sure-handedness that I read and see, particularly in the recipes. So I appreciate this book, man, big time.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, I'm sure Ricky can speak to the same experience, but for me, cooking has always been a way to travel and experience the world. It was sort of my access point to that. So the stages were fundamental for my learning, but also my experience. So as a young cook, having the opportunity to go into these kitchens, a lot of these 3 Michelin starred kitchens, they don't pay necessarily. And so a stage is an opportunity for us to go into these kitchens without having to live in Paris and make no money, or live in New York and make no money. So there's this really important part of staging for us as chefs to go in and experience. I would go into these stages. I've staged at, per se in New York and La Bernardin and, these amazing restaurants. And I would go in and I would take all these notes. I would draw out the kitchen. I would remember the equipment. I would remember how their walk-ins were organized. It was just an opportunity for me to learn. And being a really great chef is about working in different kitchens and understanding different approaches. Because if you only stay in one kitchen, you only see one sort of perspective of what a kitchen is. It can be very limiting. Right. And I think that as our field is evolving, and it needs a lot of change still, I think staging is still a really important part of our industry. And I hope that doesn't ever really go away, because it is just an access point to the mindset of some of these creative geniuses. And I just have always really enjoyed that for myself. So
Right. I would say, Whitney, I'm going to piggyback on your thought. The idea of going to a stage is, for me, it was always about what makes this environment great, what makes it top tier, what makes it stellar, what are the behaviors required to work in such an environment. For me, as I hired people, I've tried to make sure I don't make myself a fossil, because I'm very rooted in what that means to have a sound fundamental training.
Mhm.
you know, and an understanding of behavior in the kitchen. You know, not only do, you know, we peel the onion a certain way, but also we clean our station a certain way. Also, we wash our hands, you know, constantly. Oh, you know, those fundamental things that we're not even talking about, like preparation or cooking yet, just a behavior. And that's the one thing that I really picked up on, you know, just from a cultural standpoint. You know, you go to, you know, somewhere in France, you know, there's a cultural conditioning that goes along with working in a Michelin starred environment. And I was always intrigued by that. And as you know, I was a note taker. I had diagrams. I had little cards. I saved every menu I worked at. I still have them right now. Every place I ate. I would like to say also that part of your education is eating.
Mhm.
I ate a lot. I ate in a lot of different environments. Me and my wife and I, we've been married for 30 years. I got to say that. But she was been my partner, and we've eaten everywhere, you know. And that was, for me, you know, obviously, you know, you understand fundamentals. Cooking is you know which direction you want to go, but it's on the other side that's important too, on the receiving side, on the hospitality side, you know, because now you, in my mind, as I share with folks, you know, you're a stronger cook once you know who's sitting at the table and how they're experiencing it.
Absolutely.
Did Ricky, when we talked before, you mentioned, or I think in maybe even some interviews I've seen of you, you talked about oftentimes being the only Black person in a kitchen. And did that pose any, I mean, I'm sure it did pose some particular challenges, but I'd love for you to talk just a little bit about that. It seems, you know, super relevant today to think about that.
And thank you for the question. I would love to speak to that. As a professional chef, okay, as I started off as a young cook, obviously I looked for people that looked like me, okay? And as I looked and searched, a lot of those people weren't on the forefront, but they were there. And historically, you know, if we go all the way back to the original 13 colonies and frankly, you know, the beginning of American cuisine, you know, enslaved people were in the kitchens. Enslaved people were the ones who were, you know, producing this delicious buffets, you know. So I spent a lot of time and energy, you know, like studying that, particularly when I went to CIA, because, you know, when I went there was only one African-American chef there, and he was a pastry chef, a pastry instructor. And so I started studying and said, wait a minute. I mean, you know, historically, we spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So where are the chefs that look like me? So, you know, when I researched that, it gave me a sense of, okay, cool. I'm obviously not the only one. But, you know, as I navigate through the kitchens, for me, it didn't matter technically. Now, obviously, you know, in some circles you feel isolated or whatever, but my goal was, I wasn't concerned about that. My concern was finding out who in the kitchen was the best. Okay, and I was going after their position every time. It was never in a negative context. It was more like, look, you know, I'm here to take care of business. That's how I was reared, you know. So I never felt isolated or never really feel it challenged, you know. I mean, look, you know, I'm gonna outperform the guy who's the person who's the best. And so that put me in a different place, you know. So I mean, in terms of challenges, I really didn't have any real challenges, honestly, you know. I mean, look, you know, it's competition in the kitchen. You know, that makes everybody good. It makes everybody better. You know, it felt sometimes a bit weird because, you know, a lot of times one would say, well, you know, a lot of African Americans choose not to come into the hospitality business because generationally their families reared them or told them, look, you know, you're not working in anybody's kitchen. You're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or someone of a different profession to help the community. Because grandmama worked in the kitchen. You ain't going to do that. You're going to college and do something different. Not better, but different. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, you know, I mean, that is one of the places, you know, I think a lot of people may not understand. You know, it's a cultural thing. You know, we've been relegated sometimes to those back when there were menial, you know, tasks. And generationally, we want to make sure that our offspring did something different. So I never felt any kind of way, honestly. You know, like I said, I'm a competitive person, and I enjoy what I do, and I love learning. I have a thirst for learning, so I just had a good time, wherever I was at.
That's great. And Whitney, how about you? Being I feel like this has traditionally been a very male dominated field. Talk a little bit about being a female in this world.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting to see how our industry has continued to evolve since, I jumped into this career, and I'm sure Ricky can say the same. It's continued to change, right? I mean, when I first started, I did feel, I realized that there just weren't a lot of women in the kitchen, especially when it came to the savory side. And I've said this before, I've often early in my career, not so much now as I've established an identity and a reputation, but it's sort of like, oh, are you the pastry chef? It was just an automatic.
Right.
And I cook with my husband. I have cooked with my husband for a long time. And early on, we always kept the dynamic. I mean, he is a little quieter than I am naturally. I'm very chatty. But we always made sure to keep my name actually a little more forward purposefully, because we didn't want, and this was agreed upon by us, we didn't necessarily want for me to be looked over because I had a partner that was a man. And I don't feel like that is necessarily as relevant right now as maybe it was 10 years ago when we made those decisions early on. But I think there's been an evolution. I mean, I was like Ricky, I went into a kitchen, and I think, really great chefs do this, where it's sort of like, who is the best? Who can I learn from? There was a lot of casual misogyny in the kitchen.
Yep, absolutely.
And so you just sort of, I had to dig into some of that in a way when I was a line cook. But now as the dominant figure and chef in my kitchen, I don't let that exist. And I feel like the more kitchens I've experienced, the higher level they go. There is a level of intellectual thinking that permeates the environment. It's the same thing as abusive kitchens that used to be much more relevant. It doesn't exist the same way now. People don't want to be treated badly. And, that has slowly began to sort of go away. So.
Right.
So, the gender roles, it's interesting to kind of talk about the same idea where women were the cooks, right? And
absolutely.
And you go into kitchens and it's but the chef is the man. So,
right, absolutely.
These roles, these traditional roles that, were dominated by, certain cultures or certain genders are now it's like white guys came and took over all these great positions as soon as they were very valuable.
Absolutely. Yes. When they had value, oh yes. I want to be that now. You move out of the way. Well, I would say I want to speak to the misogyny piece, because that was one thing that I can honestly say in my career, honestly, wherever I was at, regardless of my position, I challenged that consistently.
Yeah.
Just because just wasn't correct.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't fair, wasn't proper behavior. That's not how men act, so that I want to speak to that, because now, you just see all these things happening. And frankly, I'm so happy that our industry got cracked open, okay? And all this stuff is spilling out. It's necessary in order for us to evolve, Debbie, I wanted to speak to one thing, being the only Black person in the kitchen. Now, from a leadership standpoint, I wanted to speak to some of the positions I've had in untraditional environments as the leader. So, if I'm, I was the chef of a classic French bistro. Culturally, I didn't grow up in France, but I do understand fundamentals of cooking. I did understand culturally how dishes should be, and I understand what tastes good. So, it was several times where I would be in the kitchen, and then, we have a crowd full of people, and when I came out, people were like, huh? How does this guy, they didn't verbally say that, but the expression on their face was, wait a minute, where's the chef? Let's being honest, where is he? He's supposed to be, has long whiskers, round with a tall toque. That's what I need to see. Get him out of here, But, I never took it personal because I knew that was the case. I knew I was outside of what people's perception was going to be, So, I mean, and just like in another situation, I was doing a French Middle Eastern restaurant. So me and the owner sat and we talked and ate with his mother. And I understood the nuances of Middle Eastern food. So when I was doing these tasting menus and, when I went into the dining room, what? How did you know Culinary? How did you know this stuff? So I mean, those are the things that, that I think about, when you talk about being the only, and I guess this is different because I am outside of what people think I should be. And that was one thing I always tried to do too, is stay diverse in my experiences. I was never wanted to be pigeonholed at all, and frankly, to be honest with you, Whitney, I've always found a camaraderie with working with females. They behave with a level of maturity that is important to me. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just being honest here. There's a behavior, and right now, the majority of my employees are female.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest right now today, and not because it's by choice, because they have a maturity that I believe is an appropriate quality to work in a kitchen,
in
a busy kitchen, and take care of business, not, work off of ego, but work off of taking care of things, So I am a big proponent in changing our whole culture. I was reared in the whole yelling thing and all that pan throwing and all that stuff, No, I hated it then. I hate it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You both have also cooked in competitive cooking situations on TV. Whitney, you did Top Chef, and Ricky, you were on Iron Chef.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear from both of you just how those experiences were. And
All right. I can
yeah.
jump. So Top Chef came along at a very early stage in my career. And I was working for Hugh Atchison at the time, who was sort of like a guidepost for me all along the way. It was almost like he was an unintentional mentor. I wouldn't say we were close, but I could see the steps he was taking in his career. And, he actually reached out to me and said that they were looking for someone to go on Top Chef. And I knew that there is something really strong about being an identifiable presence. And I didn't necessarily want to go into that show. I was very, again, green in my sort of positioning as an executive chef for the very first time. And I was kind of fighting against what I knew as a cook then. But I did really love the experience. I mean, how lucky are we to have had these experiences? There's so many amazing cooks and chefs out there. But for me, it was a real opportunity to sort of dig into a group of professionals, right, who are striving for the same things as me, who live all over the country, right, and have so many different experiences. I had a lot of respect for the people that I was on the show with. I have a lot of respect for people who are working hard in general and have goals. So for me, it was a great way to sort of get to know other amazing cooks. To have my food judged for me was a fabulous thing. I mean, to have Tom Colicchio tell me what is terrible about my cooking, I loved, because it's only going to make me better, And so the entire experience was really motivating for me, and I really enjoyed the process and all of the amazing people I worked with.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Ricky, how about you with Iron Chef?
So let me go way back on you. So CIA, I'm getting out of class, after, dinner service, I'm going home, I stay up late at night, I'm doing homework, I'm studying, and I'm looking at Chef Hideyuki Sakai, all right? It's the original Iron Chef, sort of cadre, and he was my favorite, and I used to watch it religiously. I mean, how cool was it to think that in my profession, there's a professional competition for chefs, for cooks, And it was brilliant. I mean, like I said, I've always been a competitive person. I played sports. So I saw people with chef coats and toques on in 1 hour creating all this food. And it was like, these athletes. So I was always fired up, and I anticipated watching it. I was in New York, obviously, Hyde Park, New York, 12 o'clock at night. It came on, and me and my wife used to watch it religiously, and so that was the beginning. I said, man, I would love to be on that show one day. And so I was in Washington, D.C. I was the chef at a place called Agraria, which was down in Georgetown, and it was a 350-seat restaurant owned by the North Dakota Farmers Union, okay? And that was sort of a farm-to-table concept back in 2005, okay? And, I had been there for 2 years, and I was kind of working, and one day I got a cold call when I was doing inventory. Somebody said, hey, would you like to be on Iron Chef? I said, this is a joke, click. And I just hung up after that. I was always stressed that I had inventory to do. And so they called back and said, yeah, this is a real call. We'd like to be on Iron Chef. So I said, okay, send me an email, whatever, and I'll follow up. And so they sent me an official letter and everything. And they gave me all the instructions. And, I was really excited. I battled Michael Simon in a Thanksgiving battle. Okay. And then it was a super duper experience. Got to go back up to New York, hung out, had a good time. Me and Michael hung out too, no big deal. But it was something about me coming out into the kitchen stadium after seeing one of my heroes on the original show come out the same way. It was just remarkable. You know what I mean? It was just remarkable. And I remember, thinking about, man, this is going to be a real hour. This is taped. I got to get this done. And it was successful. And the one thing I'll say is that, Michael Simon has just got awarded the Iron Chef. So I couldn't beat him. I don't care how good I cooked. You know what I mean? I don't care how good he was. They were not going to let him lose. But it was all in fun.
Was rigged.
Yeah. It was all in fun. Me and him hung out afterwards. It was cool, man. We went out to go eat. We drank, whatever. Everything's good to go. But I was just, for me, that was a, we all get into our careers and we peak and we arc. And that was one of those times where I'm like, yeah, I'm in executive chef roles for the like 7 years. Then I was, in a good space, a strong leader, from a cooking standpoint. I felt really confident, so I took my two best guys and we went up there and tried to do some work, and represent. So it was fun. I had a great time. I still have everything, all the little, memorabilia and stuff like that I show, so beautiful. I had a great time. I wouldn't do it again though. I'm too mature for that now.
I was just going to ask.
I want to build businesses.
So Ricky, you wouldn't do it again. Whitney, how about you?
Yeah, I would. I think then I was so young in my career that it would be fun to go back now with my confidence, the confidence I have, and having identified my own style. Cause then it was when you're a chef for the first time, you kind of reflect who you worked for.
Yeah. You regurgitate sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it takes time to build that confidence of what your own food is. And so it'd be, I got super nervous sometimes, I don't know if you experience that too, but I was like, tomato, what do I do with the tomato? What do I do with the tomato? So the camera's in your face. It's in your own kitchen, you're like, oh, 1 million tomatoes? This is what we do with 1 million tomatoes.
Right. That environment.
I was nervous, but now my confidence level, so.
Yeah. Well, you know what, let me take that back. How do I want to do something that the return on the experience needs to be meaningful. You know what I mean? That's where, we're battling for the next great concept in America. I don't know. That will be meaningful for me. I guess I'm not necessarily, look, I can cook all day with the best of them, ready to go. Let's do it. But I feel like, it needs to be a little bit something more meatier for me. That's all, nervousness. Yeah, I stay that way. I stay in a state of, not in a crippling sense, but it's like, man, I function off of that because it makes me, I don't know, in a weird way, feel better and feel more energized to get something done. I know that real quick story, the gentleman my sous chefs at the time that I brought on Iron Chef. Now, this guy, I had a dish on the menu, all right? It was some sort of venison preparation. And he did it a million times perfectly. Guess what happened? He got on the show and jacked it up. The meat was raw. The meat was raw. I had to poêle it to death. I had to baste it with butter until it was like, dude, what happened? What happened? But yeah, I mean, you know what? Who knows what I would do? It all depends on the circumstance. Right now when we're talking, probably not. But maybe tomorrow, like, oh yeah, I can do it. So.
If so you've both have talked a little bit about your families. We have not talked about your kids. I know that Ricky, you have a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Yes.
And Whitney, you have an 8-month-old. So and I would imagine juggling an intense profession like you both are in, and a family can be challenging at times. But I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that. Both, how your families are in. Well, obviously your child Whitney is not quite involved yet in your business, but Ricky, I think your kids have had some involvement.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say. First of all, I'd like to speak to my wife. Like I said, we've been married for 30 years. So, man, she has been she has balanced me out. She's been there to kind of, be there when stuff is jacked up, but my kids are, they help me out, and I make sure that Hunter and Grayson I don't want them to be forced into it. Through osmosis and indirectly, they get an experience based on what I've been doing for the majority of my life. So, like, they understand quality, they understand seasonality. They go to the market with me. They know when something is not properly seasoned or balanced, and they use the term balanced all the time. Not just it needs more. No, balanced. For them, it's fat to acid to this to season to spice to sweetness. They know all these things because I obviously talk about it all the time. But my son seems to be, he's a picky eater still. Grayson, he's 12, but I think he's inclined to be a cook before my daughter. My daughter seems like she has a sommelier behavior. Her palate is strong, and she can speak to what's good to her, in a very confident manner, but my son is going to be a lion dog. I think he likes to cook. He's working on his omelet right now, in his own way. But they come to the business and help me every so often, but I don't force them to, I really don't. My son, he's wanting to work now. So I bring him with me on Saturdays, and he peels all the shrimp. So he peels like 40 pounds of shrimp, and I pay him. Yep. Mm-hmm. And that sort of thing, so he can get what he wants. But they're both. There's a lot of times where I was away, and and sometimes I regret it a lot. Like I said, thank God for my wife Norma, always there. But now I bring them in now since they're a little bit older and they understand. Hunter, she's driving now, she's my Uber, so she drives me around. So it's a wonderful thing. But yeah, they're very engaged, and also they were very instrumental in the TV show that I had, which was awesome. And they were so natural. Didn't want to be there natural.
And that was The Hook. Is that the Hook you're referring to? Yeah, exactly. That was a great, really fun show. People can pull that up and watch it now. Whitney, I think about you with you and your husband being chefs, and you starting this new adventure, which I want you to talk to us about. But having an 8-month-old on top of all of that, I can hardly imagine, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I can be honest in saying that my career is not one that's been kind to, families. And I think it's been something that I've had to really consider throughout my life, like where I was in my career in order to have children. And I know a lot of people feel that way, but it's sort of like what Ricky was saying when he was cooking in a French restaurant. Nobody expects a pregnant woman to walk out of the kitchen and be like, I was your chef.
Ta-da!
Yeah. It's like, I think there needs to be more images of pregnant women in general in the workforce, in different roles, in leadership positions. It's not a visible thing. And I knew, in even where I was at the Greyfield Inn on Cumberland Island, like that place, I couldn't have stayed there when I had a child because it wasn't because they wouldn't have been hospitable to me having a family. It wasn't the people, but it was the environment. I didn't have a house that was my own on the island. In order to live on that island, you have to live in staff housing, right? And even though I had my own great little space, it was never my space or my furniture. And so in choosing to have a child, I ultimately was choosing to leave this place that I love and that I loved working to. Mm-hmm. And luckily, I have set myself up in my career. I knew all along the path that I was taking, but I had to be very strategic when I had a child. And my husband and I do work together. We always have. And so now even in this project, he's a little more withdrawn from this project in order to protect our time with our child. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that as a chef, in having an 8-month-old, I feel like it's like already changed my personality. Like I am a little less ego driven I used to be, which is like wonderful. But I'm also more protective of my time. There is a lot of expectations that chefs constantly give. I'm sure, Ricky, you felt this too. It's like, come to this event for free and give us food for free and do all of these things. And I feel like now that I have a child, I am a little more careful in saying, and what I say yes to, and making sure that there's rhyme and reason to all of my decisions. And, the other statement is too, that like our kitchens, are kitchens where, you've worked 70, 80 hours a week. And it's like, how do I create a different environment so that I can still be a mother and be there? And that's just sort of like, it's kind of like a river that's ever shifting and changing. So
amen to that. Amen to that. Let me chime in with real quick, Whitney. Yes. When I wrote in my business plan that when I started my business, I was going to find the balance. Because my wife held me accountable for that. I said, look, fine, I support the idea. All these years you've been working like a madman. So let's think about strategically how we're going to do this. You got to create a situation where there's some balance for you. And I sat and wrote my business plan, over to kind of think about it and what it means for me to. What are hours of operation? What is it going to look like? How does it feel? What's the numbers look like? What's performer look like? And I came up with the idea that this concept will not be open 7 days, not in the beginning. Okay, I will have 2 days off. All right, not just for myself, but also for my employees. That's part of that industry change to evolve the industry. No longer do we need to be working crazy and we work 15 hours a day, get paid for 8. Been there, okay? And you did it because you wanted to be the pro you needed to be in that environment. It was that competitive. So I told myself, I'm going to open this business. We will be closed 2 days a week. I will find the most robust days of the week where we're generating revenue, and that's when we'll open. But other than that, we're going to have time to our families, So I really made that so I can identify, Whitney, where you're coming from, and as you said, we get called on a lot, do a lot of things, and we want to do them. My heart wants to do them, but you know what? I'm saying no today. That's all. Today, I can't do it because my child needs to go to a recital, or my son needs to, hang out with his friends, and I want to be part of that experience. And I need to make sure that one of the things that have been hard for me, and I finally got it done after 5 years of starting this business, was to let go. Whitney, when I first opened up my business, I would never leave it. I was there. I needed to validate the foundation of the business, the brand, and build the confidence in the consumer. So if I had to go someplace, I would shut it down. I put a chalkboard sign, hey, I got an appointment. I see you at 3:00, or I wasn't going to open that day. So So I do understand where you're coming from with that. It's just, I need to make sure that I made that happen for myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you were building something for your family too. And I think that's really valuable. Like what you were doing, building your own business. It's like, I definitely have thought about the idea that like we are setting an example for our children and our hard work and what that time is being put into, and owning your own business is such like an amazing, valuable thing to be building for your family too. So.
Yeah. I they sometimes that gets misunderstood from the chef's perspective. I'm sorry. From the chef's perspective, I work hard. I'm taking care of things. Hey, don't you see me working hard? It doesn't connect. That's not what that's what you're doing, but it doesn't connect. So I've had those challenges from my wife and my children. Hey, I hear you, but it's not translating right now. So I had to really rethink that personally. You know? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Ricky, so when you started your restaurant in Durham, the first Saltbox seafood joint, as you said, it was really, you were a one-man operation there.
Yes.
And then that business has been so successful, and you've grown. You now have 2 locations, and I believe, are you now open 7 days a week? Did I read?
Ma'am.
No, you're still not. You're still not.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Both locations are closed Sunday, Monday.
Good. So you've been able to maintain that. That's great.
Right. And in my mind, Sunday family day, family dinner, and then Monday is a business day to take care of your appointments. That's from my perspective. Okay. So, but I'm committed to that. And look, if it evolves to that point, if it's meaningful, if there's enough trained staff in place to do so, and the numbers dictate it, then I'm a businessman. So I'm gonna think about it from that standpoint. But I'm always gonna find the balance. I'm not gonna deviate from making sure that my employees have a quality of life. Really important. As a small business owner, I'm not able to provide so much, so I gotta figure some stuff out.
Sure. Yeah. And Whitney, I'm real anxious for you to have a chance to tell us about your new adventure, which is so exciting. So tell us what you're working on right now.
Sure. As I speak to like trying to find more balance, I come along and open something even bigger. I've had the opportunity to come to Savannah. I'm opening a signature restaurant in a hotel that's being built, the Thompson Hotel, which is a beautiful, beautiful sort of boutique style lifestyle hotel. And I'm involved in developing sort of the personalities for all of the restaurants in the space, but you'll be able to find me on that ground floor space, sort of creating a little taste of what the cookbook is, but ultimately my perspective on the Georgia coast, the wild sort of flavors that exist here. And it's a really, really great, interesting project. And I'm really excited because I am a natural traveler. And so I've sort of grown to love the hotel world. And I think that food in the hotel business in our country needs to continue to improve. And I was really excited about this partnership because their whole identity really seems to be in line with the idea of having really amazing chefs in some of their properties. So I knew it could be a really great partnership and a really great sort of place for me to sort of grow. Another thing about being on Cumberland, which I loved, is how isolated it is, but we didn't have the ability to serve everyone because not everyone can afford to come and stay at a place like Greyfield. So I love that I'm in a larger community so that I can be a little more involved too. So it's going to be an interesting experience for me. I usually have wild horses as my neighbors. And now I have a car parked out front. I'm starting to stoplights and stop signs again.
Congratulations, Whitney. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. That's a meaningful step. And sounds like big fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And of course, I have a goal of continuing to write. I mean, and maybe Ricky, you feel the same way, but writing a cookbook for me was such joy. It was such a pleasure. And I already have ideas and I have, proposals ready to go. So a second book hopefully will be coming again soon.
Well, I would say, Whitney, as Saltbox was my apprenticeship to entrepreneurship, the book was the same thing. It was something to get me in the mindset or the behavior to write a book. I mean, I got a ton of ideas, but I really needed help to bring it all together and make it make sense and make it be appealing to folk, because for me, I guess I would define my book more of a like theater of the mind. I wanted people to read the words and, use their mind and say, what is he talking about? And for me, next books, I think about it a lot. I have a lot of colleagues around me who are cookbook authors, a ton of people here in Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area, tons of them. So I got a lot of coaches around me, and I utilize them a whole bunch. But yeah, at some point, I'm interested in doing a different book, but I'm not sure yet, honestly. Tons of little sticky notes on my wall right here. But, I wish I could turn around and show you, but man, I got a whole wall full of it.
I'm a sticky note person too.
Yeah, man, I see some right here on the side. I got a ton of them, Whitney. Oh my God.
It's how I organized my book, honestly.
Really?
In the process of writing it, there's so many recipes in a recipe with my book.
Right.
It's not just like one.
Right.
And so in order to really fully test them and make sure they were formatted, it was just I put it on Instagram once, but it was just this huge wall taped off with painter's tape, right? Which is good for labeling as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all purpose.
It was a million sticky notes and they would get moved. And that was how I kept sort of my workflow going. So
yeah, it sounds like me. I'm old school, man, composition book, jot down notes. Yeah. I had somebody to help me organize my thoughts. I called on all my coaches, like, yo, man, what do you do? Okay, how I got everybody involved. I was not going to be, I'm trying to run a business too.
Yeah.
Business, then write a book, and then my family, going back to balance, right? My family needed me, my kids need, and I'm up 1:00 at night, and I started. I mean, I'm sleepy. I'm going to sleep. Sorry, I gotta go. I just stopped. So I got overwhelmed at times, but I'm glad I got through it. It was a great learning lesson for me. I'm a cookbook fanatic. I got a whole wall full of cookbooks. I trade them, that sort of thing. So I knew I had the skill set to do the activity, but just a matter of sitting down and doing it. So
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Whitney, I loved on your website, you have your travel page with your recommendations. And so I'm going to encourage you to fill out some of those that are coming because I made a note. I thought next time when I'm traveling again, which we hope will be at some point later this year, just such an amazing guide to some wonderful places. So I love that you include that on your site.
Yeah, traveling is really just so incredibly important to me. I say that I like to try to take mini retirements every other year where I just kind of disappear for 2 months when I have the luxury to do it. But for me as a chef, I mean, travel is it's my inspiration. It's my refresh. It's my education. It's there's so many beautiful places in the world to see and experience. And so that's sort of my goal, is to perpetuate that, and I do the heavy research before I go. So of course, my husband and I analyze where we are eating.
Right, we have to.
Proximity to where we're eating. And if you ask us what we did in a day, we'll tell you 3 restaurants we went to. We realize we overanalyze it. So I might as well share that analytical nature. And that was one of the goals for me with the Saltwater Table too, I wanted it to be a way to get there. If you can't go to Cumberland easily and you don't have a place to stay there, at least this book can transport you to that space. And like I said, I'm visual. And so it's just I wanted people just to kind of feel like they were there when they opened those pages. But I will definitely finish those travel pages.
That's great. And Whitney, I'll say you really achieved that with the Saltwater Table. When I was in college, I spent a spring break with my biology class camping on Cumberland, and it was just such a magical experience. And this just brought me right back to that. So it was really beautifully beautifully done.
Yeah, I miss living there. I mean, I'm in partnership with this hotel, and I was like, I am a very wild human being. Like, I'm not used to living in a normal environment. Experience, but I can't promise anything.
That's funny. That's
Ricky, I also enjoyed, Ricky, seeing there was a video about your Green Book Supper Club.
Yes.
Yeah, and are you still hosting those?
Yeah, you know what? That's came to a halt just because of the gathering.
Yep.
Not comfortable with the gathering of the people.
Yep.
But we started that. Me and a colleague of mine, Adrian Lindsay, we started that as a way of educating. Okay. Historically, the Green Book was used for African Americans to be able to travel safely and where they could stay and eat and dine and that sort of thing. So we wanted to kind of start that conversation based on the climate that we're in. We thought it was appropriate. And the beautiful thing, the inaugural dinner was a beautiful situation because everything was perfect. I mean, the weather was perfect. We had a dining room full of diversity. We had a small little presentation that we talked about the Green Book and what that meant, and that sort of thing. And I had delivered the food. It was more of a supper situation. We made it feel like supper as opposed to any sort of it was a homecoming, if you will. And,
Sure.
and people really enjoyed that, it was a fabulous event. And then, we couldn't do it because everybody got busy. Then people keep calling, hey, when are you going to do another supper? When are you going to do another one? We can't wait. We're going to do another one. So, but fun event. There again, another sort of indirect educational piece, just to let folks know of history and that sort of thing. And then here in Durham, per the traditional Green Book, there were three businesses that were in that book.
Mm-hmm.
They no longer exist, but we kind of spoke to that. So
that's great. And Greensboro has a Green Book site, the historic Magnolia House, which had been a house that had gone under quite disrepair, and a family purchased it, restored it. They are now kind of in a second phase of restoring it as a museum to share that history of the Green Book. And before COVID, they had a Sunday night jazz supper and meals a couple other nights. And so I love that connection with the Green Book. And one of the other conversations in our 21 Conversations festival is with the author Candace Taylor, who wrote the book called The Overground Railroad, which is about the history of the Green Book. So just thought you might be interested in that.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
Yeah.
No. I think I saw one, I don't know, there's one restaurant out there, I don't know, in Michigan, where they have like little, lunch boxes with the history on the box.
Yes, the shoebox. Are they kind of shoebox lunches?
Yes.
Well, shoebox lunches. Yeah, the Magnolia House here is doing that too.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, as I think we're kind of winding down to the end of our time, but so I want to kind of come back to the books again one more time. I want to really encourage everybody to purchase these books. We always encourage you to purchase from a local bookseller, wherever that local happens to be for you. Ricky, if you were to encourage somebody to get started with cooking something out of your book, what would you send them to?
The first thing I would do is to go and find a trusted fishmonger.
Great.
First thing, trusted, knowledgeable, local. Go ask them questions. Go spend some time there. Go hang out for a little bit. Just the important thing for me is, particularly with fish, because it can come across intimidating for the normal home cook. It just can, so for me, the first thing you do is you got to be educated, so you can build this level of confidence. So when it's time to approach those recipes, at least you have confidence. In my book, I wanted to make sure that things were simple. I didn't want to make them too complicated or, have the ingredients too difficult to source. This was for the home cook that needed to build a level of confidence in preparing local seafood where they are. Okay. And so that's the first thing I would say.
That's excellent advice. That's terrific. Thank you. And Whitney, with the Saltwater Table, how would you encourage us to all get started with this? That's a hard question, I know.
I do want to say that, like what Ricky said is so important, because it's like you cannot find good fish in a grocery store most of the time.
No, you
and
can't.
like people are like, I don't know how to cook fish, and it's
Yes.
it's just like you don't have access to good fish. That's why. Like if you do, then you would love it, you know. And,
Right.
So that's like what he's saying is so important. Like looking for that great product and like getting comfortable. Like fish is such a beautiful, easy protein. Ultimately, you know, like you can have dinner in like no time with like a little bit of lemon juice and a tiny bit of butter or olive oil, and dinner is good.
You're done.
So to his note, he is so right. But my answer is like a much more romantic, like, because
say it, Whitney. It's okay. We need that too. We need that.
Yeah. So my husband and I have our biscuit recipe in the book, and that's probably where I'd start people, just because it's so like special to us. And he was really so important in my understanding of Southern cuisine. And I would never present to be authoritarian on a cuisine that is not the one that I grew up with, but like he has really brought me into his family. And I've studied food in the South for so long. So to share a biscuit recipe is really just like really important. It's part of like how I grew to become the chef that I am. So yeah.
I want your biscuit recipe and that pork chop together.
That's what my sister requests.
Together, okay.
Visit us. Like she asks Ben and I that we cook the fried pork chops and biscuits and peas and greens, and
that's right.
My sister, that's her go-to.
Yes, sir. I was like, Whitney, one of the dishes I really it felt good to me reading it. It was the tomato jam and coconut. That makes sense. That makes so much sense.
Tell us a little bit more about that dish.
Sure. So it's we use Burberry spice to build this tomato jam, which is in the summer we get flooded by tomatoes. And so on Cumberland I had a garden that I worked with specifically. So my goal was to get through that produce the best that I could. And so we have a glut of tomatoes, and how do you present tomatoes in really unique different ways? Right. So that dish was built up really off the flavors of what I say is the there's sort of this tropical side to the South that doesn't always come into conversation. Sure. On the coast, we have a semi-tropical climate, right? And so there are flavors that, you don't think of Southern cooking unless you know Southern cooking. The rest of the country doesn't think of its link to the Caribbean, but there really is like so
absolutely
much, right?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Lemongrass grows so beautifully on the island. Ginger grows so beautifully on the island. And these are flavors that come in from other cultures too. And so in pulling from those identities and being in the location we were, this coconut broth has lemongrass and ginger, and the tomato jam has this Burberry spice, and spices are so important in building flavors. But I thought it really set off what that sort of tropical South identity sort of.
No, that dish, kind of spoke to me when I saw it. And, you think about the South and coconut. See, the context in the South is a coconut cake.
You're right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, you can, we compartmentalize ingredients in the South, from my perspective. And you can take that coconut cake and put it in a broth.
Yeah, exactly.
You can do it. So
the beauty of the ingredients, but this is an agricultural place. There's so many beautiful vegetables. There's so many different flavors. A citrus coming in from the coast. I mean, people just don't even think of the citrus growing that we have like all over.
Right. So. I mean, you brought up a really valid point, though. Yeah, there is a link between Caribbean island flavors to the South. Absolutely. There was a ton of cross-cultural amalgamation of folks in that environment. So that totally makes sense. You can think about that from a South Carolina standpoint too. I can't reference the specific dish, but I can't call it now. But no, I really that dish was like, that makes sense. That was thoughtful. Got it. That was I knew you from that dish. I knew what type of chef you were right there. Definitely.
Thanks. I'll have to put that on the menu here in Savannah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So awesome.
Well, this has been such a nice conversation. You both have really inspired me, and I know inspired folks listening to think about our local environment and to think about travel, and inspired us to fish and to cook. And it's just been wonderful. And I hope to have the chance to visit both of your restaurants in the coming year. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and just share your knowledge and expertise and just have a nice, honest, fun conversation.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope that we can all share a table again soon.
Yes. That's what
Absolutely.
I'm anticipating. That's what I'm. So, Whitney, where's the hotel opening up again?
It's going to be probably in July. It's not
Okay.
set yet, but probably in July.
Where again? Excuse me, I'm
So
sorry.
it's in Savannah. It's
Okay.
Savannah.
Got it. Okay, got it. Savannah. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Ricky, that sounds like a great little getaway for you and your wife.
Yeah, I'm going to get that done. Don't worry.
Well, if you feel like cooking, my kitchen's open. We'll do a dinner.
Right on. Absolutely.
Oh,
We'll
that'd
get
be
that done. I'll hit
A Saltbox takeover.
I'll hit Mashama, then I hit you, I think. Yeah, in that order. Yeah. Awesome. Glad to be here. Glad to participate. Whitney, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I mean,
Likewise. Thank you so much. We have a lot in common. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Oh yeah. We're gonna be bonding. I'm gonna pop up one day like Whitney. I'm gonna get with Whitney.
I'll be there for you.
Thank you again for joining us for 21 Conversations. If you enjoyed this presentation, please like and share with your friends and fellow readers. One final reminder that Greensboro Bound is a nonprofit organization committing to bringing together readers and writers throughout the year at zero cost to our community. Please help Greensboro Bound maintain that commitment with a sustaining or one-time gift now. The number to text to give and the website are on your screen. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you in person next year for the Greensboro Bound Literary Festival.